Desperado is really just 3 sections, but with some variations on a couple. So bear with me. This is quite a song because there are those variations, so it may be a little lengthy, but I'm giving you gold the whole way throughout. This is how I play it and sing it, and it sounds wonderful. Might be a little bit different than something you've been playing before, but it sounds amazing, especially if you play along to them playing it live in most of their performances. Let's dive in. Section 1 is what I consider the intro. It's like the easiest part. Let's get into it. Nice and slow. Here it is. I'm not breaking down every single chord. I'm going to have a diagram. That's on you. Here's the intro, or section 1. Right? Okay, so you got yourself a G. By the way, the rhythm's nice and slow. Down, 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 up, down, 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 up, 1 and 2, right? And by the way, so the way that I'm going to be counting this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right? That is how I'm counting it. So, by the way, there's a lot of changes in weird places. Get on my Patreon. I'm going to give you the notes that I'm looking at right now with every single measure and count and how it works. There's a lot to it. Trust me, become a Patreon member, steal this, and you can unsubscribe. I don't care, but this is worth it. Okay, the intro is easy. It's all a half a measure each. It's just G and 2 and G7 and 4, C and 2, C minor and 4 and G and 2, E minor and 4 and a 7 and 2 and a D, right? And I like to hang on that D while the remainder of that measure counts out. And that's section 1. That's your intro. You with me so far? If that was too fast, slow it down. This isn't for the weak. All right. Section 2, or your verses. This section is going to basically repeat. And then on the third time, when it shows up, will be a little variation on the end. Let's just show you the simple stuff first. We'll revisit it later. Here is your verse, or your section 2. Okay, that right there is definitely a lot. Let's break it down little by little, chunk by chunk. We've got a start on something we know and love. It's just basically the intro. G for a half measure, G7 for a half measure, C for a half measure, C minor for a half measure. Not too bad, right? This is where it gets weird. For me, I like to throw the D over F sharp in between the G and E minor chords. You don't have to do that. If it's too much, just simply cut it out and play half a measure of G, half a measure of E minor, like this. I'm going to go ahead and every time split that G with an F, D over F sharp into the E minor. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Next section is going to be A7 for a half measure, to the D for a half measure, and then we're starting kind of back over at G, G7, C, and C minor, and 4, and G, and D over sharp, E minor. Now you probably saw me give that a little extra push. Right? You can kind of play around and be on the lyric a little bit. I'm not singing because I'm worried about copyright, by the way, so hoping the Eagles don't take this thing down, but basically that's like the boring way, or you go. As long as you squeeze that in, it's going to sound really good. If you've got the if you got the chord down and you're feeling brave, right? Again, skip it if you don't need it. And then A7 to D7 to G, D over sharp is our last 4 chords of the verse. And that's going to be a quarter of a measure. That's how you play that. So it's an A7 for a quarter of a measure, D7 for a quarter of a measure, and then G for a half, D over sharp for a half. So. Okay. I'm kind of messing it up sometimes because I'm wanting to push it, but I want to keep it simple. So again, play to the track, you're going to get what I'm talking about. And that right there is a verse, okay? That will repeat a little bit later on, and we're going to get to the variation. Because it's the last section, I'm going to wait till the last minute of the video and get this kind of in order of appearance. The next section that shows up is section 3. This is your bridge. The bridge is pretty simple. Yeah, that's right. So the bridge is essentially an E minor for a half measure, B minor for a half measure, C for a half measure, and then G to the D over F sharp, right? Sharing a half a measure, so a quarter measure each. Then E minor for a half measure, C for half measure, G for 3/4 of a measure. Right, so just push that right there on beat 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then start back over on E minor. 1 and 2, B minor and 4, C and 2 and G to the D over sharp, E minor, A7, A minor to the D. Got it? Okay, so that bridge is actually the third section officially. The next section that comes after that is a repeat of section 2, your verse. It's exactly the same chords and everything, just different lyrics. Yay! All right. Then the bridge repeats again, but this time there's a variation. Okay, so this is section 3, what we just covered, with a little twist. Again, going in order of appearance. Here it is. Obviously brings you to your next and your final section. So this right here is E minor for a half measure, B minor for a half measure, C for a half measure, G to the D over F sharp, right? They're both sharing that half of that measure. Then E minor to the C, G, 2 and 3, and F, D over F sharp, right? So again, a lot of the same stuff as before, but this is where it gets tricky. It goes E minor, B minor for half measure, C for half measure, G for half measure, and then A minor for a full measure. 3 and 4. Then D for a half, D7 for a half. Right? That D7 really builds that tension, brings you right back into the G. Right? Which is the first chord of our final section. If you made it this far, awesome. We are going to cover section 2 again, the verse. But this time there's a little variation, there's a twist. Let me play it in full and break it down. Okay, so you can see that variation happens on the very end, but let's go ahead and just be thorough, go through the whole thing. The final section is G, to the G7, so sharing a measure, C to C minor, same stuff as always, and then the G to the D over F sharp. I'm kind of jumping those, but officially they're just a quarter of a measure each. Right, or whatever you want. And then A7 shares a measure with a D7. Start back over, G, G7, C, C minor, G, D. Alright, and then I'm going to jump that. That's just a quarter measure of G, quarter measure of D over F sharp, half measure of E minor. But you can play that of your two options there. And then do the same thing on a C, G over B to A minor. Or, the boring way, either way is cool. C, G over B, A minor, C for a quarter, G over B for a quarter, A minor. And then you get a G major chord for one strum, to B7, to E minor, and then A minor, D7, and then on this G here, it starts that kind of intro back over. C, C minor, and always ending on your tonic, the G. I know that was a lot. I might have pushed through it kind of fast, but get the guide. Follow along, and I will see you guys on the other side. We'd love to see you guys posting your covers of this. Please like, subscribe, become a Patreon member, and I'll see you in the next video.